Good humor ice cream in every store. If it's taste you want, you couldn't ask for more.
You heard it before you saw it. 4 bells on a metal rack, ringing from somewhere 2 or 3 blocks away. You couldn't see the truck yet. You didn't need to. Your body already knew what that sound meant. You stopped whatever you were doing. The baseball game paused. The bicycle dropped on the lawn. The jump rope hit the ground. And you ran. You ran inside, screen door slamming behind you, and found your mother in the kitchen or the living room or wherever she was. And you said the same thing every kid on your street was saying at that exact moment. Good humor was coming. She reached into her purse or the jar on the counter or the pocket of her housecoat and handed you a dime. Sometimes a quarter if your brother or sister was with you. You didn't wait for instructions. You didn't say thank you. You grabbed the coin and ran back outside, because that truck was not going to wait forever, and you could already hear the bells getting louder. By the time you reached the curb, there were already 5 or 6 kids standing there, some from your block, some from the next street over, some you'd never seen before. Barefoot, most of them, shirts untucked, one kid still holding a baseball glove. You could hear the bells getting closer, and then you saw it come around the corner. A white truck, completely white, moving slowly down your street. No music, no jingle, no loudspeaker. Just those 4 bells ringing with every bump in the road, and the low idle of a Ford engine underneath. The truck pulled to the curb in front of your house, or close enough, and stopped. The engine kept running, and a man stepped out from the side that faced the sidewalk. There was no door on the driver's side. He always got out on the curb side. That was the rule. He was dressed entirely in white. White trousers, white shirt, white jacket, white cap with a dark bill and a small gold badge on the front. His shoes were black, polished even in the heat. Around his waist, he wore a wide leather belt, the kind that crossed over one shoulder like a police officer's gear. Mounted on the belt was a chrome coin changer with 4 tubes, one for each denomination: quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies. He clicked change out of it with his thumb without looking down. He did not need to look. He had done it 10,000 times before lunch. He walked to the back of the truck and opened the freezer compartment. A cloud of cold air rolled out into the July heat. If you were standing close enough, and you always tried to stand close enough, you felt it on your face and your bare arms and down the front of your shirt. On a day when the sidewalk burned under your feet and the air sat heavy and still, that blast of frozen air was the best thing in the world. The inside of that freezer ran 20 degrees below zero. Cold plates mounted along the ceiling and walls held everything solid from 5 in the morning until the end of his route. The man reached in with his bare hand, past rows of bars and sandwiches and pops stacked in precise order, and pulled out exactly what you asked for without hesitation. He did not search. He did not rummage. He knew where everything was by feel and by position. He had loaded that truck himself before dawn, and he could find a toasted almond or a chocolate eclair with his eyes closed. That always amazed you. He would reach deep into that freezer and come back with the right bar every time, like a magician pulling the right card from the deck, and you had to choose. That was the hardest part. The menu was painted on the side of the truck, every item illustrated with a picture that showed a single bite already taken out. If you were too young to read, you pointed at the pictures. Toasted almond, with its coating of crunchy cake crumbs. Strawberry shortcake, pink and white with that particular sweetness you never found anywhere else. Chocolate eclair, long and flat with a chocolate center hidden inside. The original Good Humor bar, vanilla ice cream in a hard chocolate shell that cracked clean when you bit through it. Candy Center Crunch, which had a solid piece of chocolate buried in the middle that you did not expect the first time and looked for every time after. Coconut, banana split, orange sherbet push-ups for a nickel if a nickel was all you had. Some days, you knew what you wanted before the truck even stopped. You had been thinking about it since the last time he came. Other days, you stood there, staring at those pictures, paralyzed by the sheer number of options, while the kids behind you shifted their weight and told you to just pick one already. The good humor man never rushed you. He stood there with the freezer open, cold air pouring out around his arm, and waited. He had all day. He had seen this 1,000 times. You handed him your dime. He clicked your change, if there was any, from that chrome device on his belt and placed the bar in your hand. 10 cents. That's what a good humor bar cost through most of the 1950s and into the 1960s. A dime. You peeled the wrapper back carefully, holding the wooden stick at the bottom, and you ate it right there on the sidewalk, or the curb, or the edge of someone's lawn. The chocolate started softening immediately. It got on your fingers first, then your chin, then sometimes your shirt. Your mother would say something about it later, but not right now. Right now you stood in a loose circle with the other kids, and you ate your ice cream, and nobody was in any hurry to be anywhere else. The truck idled at the curb. The man in white served whoever walked up. Some mothers came out themselves, not rushing, crossing the lawn in house shoes, buying something for the baby or something for themselves. An older man from down the block came over and bought a bar and stood there eating it and watching the kids and not saying much. When you finished, you looked at the stick. You always looked at the stick. If the flat part said "Lucky Stick" stamped into the wood, you got another bar free. About 1 in 12 had it. You never got it when you expected it. You checked every single time, even when you knew the odds, even when you'd checked 100 sticks and come up empty. Because the one time you didn't check would be the one. The good humor man came on a schedule. He didn't wander. He had a route assigned to him by the company, and he drove it the same way every week. The same streets, the same corners, roughly the same time of day. If he came through your neighborhood on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 3 in the afternoon, that's when he came. You could plan your day around it. After a few weeks, your mother knew the schedule too. She'd have the coins out before you asked. She'd hear the bells from the kitchen and reach for her purse without being told. After a few summers, the man knew your name. You knew his. Some of them wore name badges that said Uncle Jack or Uncle Al, and the kids on the road called them that. He'd ask how your summer was going. He'd remember which bar was your favorite and have it halfway out of the freezer before you finished asking. If you were a nickel short, sometimes he covered it. If the truck broke down on your street, which happened once in a while, he might open the freezer and hand out bars to every kid standing around watching because they were going to melt anyway, and he wasn't going to let them go to waste. The company behind him took this seriously. Good humor started in 1920 in Youngstown, Ohio, when a candy maker named Harry Burt figured out how to coat ice cream in a smooth chocolate shell. His daughter told him it was too messy to eat with your hands. His son suggested putting it on a stick, the way they did with their lollipops. It worked, and within a few years, Burt had a dozen white trucks rolling through Youngstown, with bells from his son's bobsled strapped to the hood. By the mid-1950s, there were roughly 2,000 good humor trucks operating across 9 states. Every one of them was company-owned. Every driver was a company employee, not a freelancer, not a franchise holder. The company controlled everything about how that employee appeared and behaved. Drivers shaved every morning. Uniforms were laundered daily. There was a handbook called Making Good at Good Humor. Drivers tipped their cap to women and greeted men with a nod. The company understood something fundamental. Parents were sending their children to this man unsupervised with money to buy food. That trust was not given freely. It had to be built every day, on every street, by every driver. The white uniform, the military cap, the leather belt, the polished shoes, the clean shave, the formal manners, all of it existed to tell a mother watching from her front porch. One thing, you can trust this man near your kids. And she did. For most families on his route, the good humor man was as familiar as the mailman, and more welcome. He showed up when the weather turned warm, and disappeared when the leaves started falling. He marked the start of summer as clearly as the last day of school, and the end of it as clearly as the first day back. On the hottest evenings, when families sat on front porches because the house was still holding the heat of the day, you could hear his bells a few streets over, making a second pass. The sound drifted through open windows and screen doors. Even if you had already had one that afternoon, you listened until it faded. His presence was seasonal, dependable, and completely ordinary. And ordinary was the entire point. A man in white, 4 bells on a rack, a freezer full of bars, your dime in his coin changer. Nothing dramatic, nothing special, just a thing that happened on your street when the weather was right. The ordinary things are always the ones you remember longest. What killed it was not one single thing. The company had been losing money since 1968, and the bleeding went on for 10 years. Insurance costs climbed steadily. Children ran across streets without looking when they heard those bells, and when accidents happened, courts held the company responsible. Good humor drivers were Teamsters and unionized, and labor costs rose with every contract. The 1973 oil crisis made fuel more expensive, at a time when there was already nothing left in the margins. But the real problem was quieter than any of that. The freezer aisle at the supermarket was getting longer. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, you could walk into a grocery store and buy a box of ice cream bars for less than you would spend on the same number from the truck. You could eat them whenever you wanted, at 10 in the morning or 11 at night. You did not have to wait for the bells. You did not have to run outside with a dime. The thing that had made the good humor man valuable, bringing ice cream directly to your street, stopped being valuable once your kitchen had a freezer full of it. And the children who had been his primary customers were growing up. More than half of Good Humor's sales went to kids under 12. The baby boomers who had lined those curbs through the 1950s were teenagers now, and then they were adults, and then they were buying ice cream for their own kids at the store. The last new Good Humor trucks rolled off the line in 1973. Over the next several years, the company sold off its fleet, one truck at a time, for $1,000 to $3,000 each. Some drivers bought their own trucks and kept going independently, but they weren't Good Humor men anymore. Not the way you remember. The uniform was gone. The route was gone. The daily shave, the handbook, the coin changer, the cap, the belt, the rules about how you greet a customer, all of it was gone. What was left was a man in a truck with bells, and that was not the same thing. It was never the same thing again. The brand survived. Good Humor shifted entirely to grocery stores and is still sold today. You can buy a box of strawberry shortcake bars at any supermarket in the country. The bar tastes roughly the same. It sits in your freezer next to the frozen peas and the leftover soup. Nobody hands it to you from a white truck on a hot afternoon. Nobody knows your name when they do it. Fewer than 100 of the original trucks survive out of 2,000. The Smithsonian keeps one, a 1938 model, in the National Museum of American History. Restored trucks sell at auction for over $100,000 now. People hire them for weddings and birthday parties. They are museum pieces, artifacts from a version of American summer that started around 1930 and ended around 1976, and then was simply over. If you were part of it, you don't need anyone to explain what it meant. You remember the bells before you remember anything else. You remember them carrying over the rooftops on a still afternoon, getting closer, and the feeling in your chest before you even stood up. Then the running. Then the screen door. Then your mother's hand, already holding the dime. Then the truck, white and enormous from where you stood on the curb. Then the man in white, stepping out, walking to the back. Then the freezer opening, and that rush of cold air against your skin on the hottest day of the year. You remember what you ordered because you always ordered the same thing. You remember the crack of the chocolate. You remember the cold shock of the first bite. You remember the taste running down the stick onto your hand when you did not eat fast enough. You remember looking at the stick when you were done, turning it over, hoping. Somewhere on a Tuesday afternoon in a summer that felt like it would never end, a man in a white uniform pulled a truck to your curb, rang 4 brass bells, opened a freezer, and handed you exactly what you asked for. That was all it ever was, and it was enough. It was exactly enough. If this brought something back, go ahead and like the video. It helps more people find these stories. Subscribe if you have not yet. We look at another piece of everyday American life in every video, things that quietly changed or disappeared, and try to understand not just what they were, but why they stopped. Leave a comment below. Tell us what your flavor was. Tell us what street the truck came down and what time it usually got there. Tell us about the man who drove it. Because that is the part we can't research. That is the part only you know.